So, the title of this brief roundtable presentation references the saying, Strava or it didn't happen. The phrase basically references another internet meme, pics or it didn't happen, and other variations on the concept, as a way to say that additional evidence is needed, otherwise a claim is invalid. Strava or it didn't happen really just means that there's no point in engaging in an athletic event and not recording that event either with Strava or uploading it to Strava later, because otherwise your group of friends won't know that you did it, or they might not believe you when you say you did it. And I should point out that the phrase Strava or it didn't happen doesn't really suggest complete disbelief, but instead more of a need to know specific details, and to show off those specific details of an epic day in the trails, or a personal best run, or what have you. In this way, Strava functions as a way to show off your commitment to being athletic and your successes in pushing yourself harder in whatever form that takes. After all, the word Strava is Swedish for strive, and Strava is basically a public platform for recording and then showing off your exercise data, one that has become a social network and a facilitator of asynchronous competition. The data representations generated by Strava and other athletic or movement-based apps offer evidence of activity and function as an example of an inartistic public proof. Now, Aristotle says that artistic proofs are those that the speaker must invent. Arguments of definition, relationships, circumstances, testimony, notation, and conjugates. Basically what we develop and invent in order to persuade. Inartistic proofs, he claims, are things we find, quoting what others have said, laws, witnesses, contracts, or oaths. There's always some leakage between the two kinds of proofs, and there are certainly appeals to Strava's ethos embedded in every upload. Unique names and images connected to each workout showcase pathos, and the visual depiction of data offer an appeal to logos. We do a fair amount of invention to present compelling cases for each of our uploaded activities. As Derek Ross has recently argued in Topic-Driven Environmental Rhetoric, proof often functions like a fluid topic, which is his term for information that can serve both as a topic and a commonplace. Proof, in practice, is often understood through personal empiricism, and therefore dependent upon both artificial and inartificial constructions. The Strava feed, where the activities of our friends show up, is where these arguments are presented, and alongside their artistic appeals, they also function as a kind of inartistic evidence for others' activities. Now, Strava includes something called segments, which are specific sections of geography where Strava users can compete against each other and themselves in asynchronous time. When I get home, I'll upload a ride to Strava and see how I did, and I'll check the various statistics that Strava generates for both my ride and for the other people I follow on Strava, which are members of this panel, too. For many Strava users, this is the artistic and inartistic proof, the data that is offered as evidence for an activity. So we can say that Strava acts as a public display of performance that turns all participants in Strava into both competitors, uploading their own data and making their own arguments, and fans, reading and viewing their friends' and competitors' data and arguments. That said, the energy and the impetus for generating proof comes about in a different way than some symbolic acts, because in order to generate that persuasive proof, you literally have to move. Here, I want to argue that social fitness trackers in general allow for the author or athlete to generate what Carolyn Miller calls the kinetic energy of performance, and thus these actions generate a unique formation of agency. Miller's exploration of kinesis as a rhetorical concept is one of the most intriguing material and movement-oriented rhetorics to be suggested in recent years. In her essay, What Can Automation Tell Us About Agency?, Miller surveyed teachers of composition and public speaking for their opinions about a fictional product called Auto Speech Easy, a software that, when paired with a camera and a microphone, offers autonomous, accurate assessments of students' speeches. She explains that most rhetoricians restrict the attribution of agency to humans because speech, the quintessential rhetorical performance, tempts us to focus on bodily performance, motion, and presence when recognizing agency as something that humans possess prior to a rhetorical act. Miller explains, the problem we have for performing for an automated system is not that it is inscrutable. Audience is always inscrutable to at least some degree, but that we are unwilling to grant it such agentive presence and therefore cannot, in an important sense, perform. In order to combat these notions, Miller argues that we should focus on agency as the kinetic energy of rhetorical performance, the energy of movement that occurs during performance. What might this mean for the kind of public proof that must be performed first, like a bike ride on Strava? Well, it might help us understand how movement kinesis plays a role in the shared formation of proof, where agency in this formation is co-produced by Strava, us as reddors and human beings that move, and kinetic movement itself. In order to generate a public display of proof, we engage the agency for our activities and maybe participate in our being active or being through movement rendered visible. In this formation of socially presented evidence and personal action and effort, we can see where the complex of agency lies. Finally, it would be strange to talk so much about proof, agency, and mobility without also touching on the fact that in generating this kind of shareable, viewable proof, you also need some kind of wearable technology to accompany you. Lisa Melanson, who writes In the Intersection of Medical Rhetorics, Technology, and Accessibility, defines this, quote, technological embodiment through Tanya Tichkovsky's definitions, where embodiment is all the many and various ways that we, self and other, accomplish relations to being in possession of the bodies that we are. When embodiment incorporates technology, the body and its actions become technologically embodied. For some users, this may mean that their public identity is the technologically embodied production of public proof, and there are advantages to be had here. After all, that kind of persuasive condition can generate healthy habits, a meta-awareness of physical activity, and more knowledge and perhaps agency about our bodies. That said, it can also reinforce ableist assumptions more broadly. And while Strava represents itself as a company simply interested in helping people achieve their goals, it frames its users as athletes. Similar to how Krista Cheston describes some wearable technologies, Strava participates in larger persuasive force of healthism, a discourse that promotes personal responsibility, individual agency, and control through language that is readily available to certain bodies only and certain socioeconomic groups only. Candice Wellhausen describes a similar situation around a wearable device called BellaBeat, where she argues the device is designed to resonate with a very particular target audience, economically stable, able-bodied, and already physically fit young people. If we consider the role of kinetic agency in such a context, it might mean that wearable technologies like Strava functionally allow for only certain kinds of kinetic movement, which would then impact the forms of agency that can be engaged and the structures of proof that can be generated. I'm not prepared to either damn or praise Strava on these counts, and the company does not represent itself as a medical wearable, but a social media platform for athletic activity. However, I would like to place the kinds of rhetorical activity available with Strava under greater scrutiny. Of course, there's no doubting that it is a pretty compelling social media environment. After all, for its users, and I count myself among them, Strava is synonymous with movement-based evidence. Thus, the phrase, Strava, or it didn't happen.